What's up, everybody? Welcome back into another Lawyer You Know podcast. And we are recapping week one of the Brian Walsh trial with my dad. In case you don't know my dad, he's a former state and federal prosecutor, then a criminal defense attorney, been a lawyer for 50 years. He's basically seen everything you could possibly see in any criminal trial ever. And we are going to get his thoughts for the first time on this trial now that we actually know the defense's theory, how the state plans on proving this case, what evidence is going to come in, what evidence is going to be kept out. And he's got probably going to have some thoughts on whether or not Brian Walsh is going to testify, how the judge is doing so far, how the prosecutors are doing so far presenting the case, defense attorneys, how they're doing cross-examining these witnesses and potentially creating some doubt in the jurors' minds. So make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you're subscribed to the podcast, to the YouTube channel. Let's get to it. All right, Dad. We've been waiting a whole week. We got to see every single witness that testified this week because we are recording this late on a Friday night. It's about 20 degrees here in Colorado, probably 75 degrees where you are back at home. Nice and perfect weather there. Can't wait to be back there tomorrow. Although it was really nice to see the snow and walk in the snow and breathe in the crisp, cold air the last couple days here. But I'm ready to go back to Clearwater.
Well, so weather is beautiful.
Yeah, it always is. It always is. So we'll jump right in the beginning of the trial. We didn't quite know exactly how the plea open to the court was going to change the way the state presented their case or proved their case. There was some talk. People thought a lot of evidence was going to be kept out of it. We didn't necessarily see that. So there were some unknowns kind of going into trial. And then we had some theories about what the defense would be in the case based on the fact that they did plea to 2 of the 3 charges. And so we start the case like we start every case with opening statements. The state went first, or I should say the Commonwealth there in Massachusetts went first. What did you think of their opening statement?
All right. Well, the state's opening. here's the key. He's got a lot of evidence. He's got a lot of really good evidence. He doesn't have to be exciting in his opening statement, and he wasn't. I thought his opening statement was very bland. I thought that, again, he didn't have to be exciting. I'm not faulting him for being bland. He went through the case. He left out some really exciting facts that I think the jury would have loved to have heard in an opening statement. I think he could have laid out his case better in the opening statement. He could have laid out the timeline of the searches and the phone calls and the lies better in his opening statement. But again, when you have a case with this much evidence and you really know what the focus of the defense is going to be, you don't really need maybe to get into that, and that's why he left it out. But I would have given a much more thorough opening covering a lot of the evidence that he did not cover.
Yeah, I thought he hit some of the highlights. He said a lot of the buzzwords. But as we're watching the trial unfold, something I do think I wish he would have hit on more was nobody else could have done this. The evidence is only going to point to one person. Brian Walsh was only protecting one person when he lied to the police and dismembered her body. Brian Walsh was looking out for Brian Walsh and maybe highlighting the motives that they think are there a little bit better in opening statement rather than it almost felt like a wind up. And then he's like, and we're going to ask you to find him guilty at the end. I do agree with you. He didn't necessarily hit everything, but that's okay. I mean, sometimes when you got a case like this, leave a little for the jury's imagination that they are going to find out as the evidence gets presented.
Well, and then at the end, he goes, keep an open mind. I thought that was a little silly. Prosecutors don't want you to keep an open mind. They want you to convict people. They want, statistics have shown that jurors after opening statements have a feeling of how they're going to vote. And the majority of times they vote the way they felt after opening statements. So opening statements are really important. And I think this prosecutor could have done a better job. And if he really was getting into the issue of intent and premeditation in his opening statement, he really left out almost everything as an argument that why this was premeditated. And he just kind of skipped over that lightly. So I really think that he could have done a much better job.
And we're going to talk about that more as the evidence comes out as to, whether or not they're getting to the intentional premeditated homicide. Okay, so then now we get to the defense's opening statement. We finally hear what their theory is going to be. Not a big surprise to us, but it is always kind of surprising to me when I actually hear them argue it to a jury with a straight face. What did you think of the defense's opening statement and the theory that they're going with this sudden, unexpected death that Brian Walsh just woke up and was shocked in the morning as he nudged Anna Walsh, his wife, nudged her right out of bed?
Well, first off, I'll give the defense style points. I think the guy, the defense lawyer, was more animated. He was more enjoyable to watch. He kept your attention a little more. Again, it's
More
easy to
engaging.
criticize.
He was more
Yeah,
engaging.
and it's easy to criticize. He moved back and forth a little too much, but I really think he did a better job of presenting himself to the jury, and how he was going to present himself, raising and lowering his voice. He did the things to keep their attention. So I think he gets style points. Now, problem he's got is I don't care how great your style is, you got rotten facts that you're going to argue. You got problems. And he had to come up with this theory that she had sudden, unexplained death. And that's his theory as to what happened here. We always knew, and we've discussed this in the past, that it was going to have to be, especially since he pled to those 2 counts, it was going to be, I didn't kill her. It wasn't me. So, it had to be somebody else. We didn't know if he was going to do a third party. We didn't know if he was going to, blame something else. But now we see we have a sudden unexplained death, and that's what he's going with. But as we'll see during the course of the trial, even though that's what he's going with, you can tell by his questions where he's really focusing, I think. And I really think it's something else other than that.
Yeah, and he's still doing the defense lawyer job, right?
Right.
Picking a theory and sometimes taking on a burden can be difficult. Sometimes you got to do it. Sometimes you got to have something to argue with the jury with a straight face. But every defense attorney's job is to poke holes, highlight reasonable doubt, maybe create some reasonable doubt, or argue against the harshest and highest crime charged for a potential lesser included, which we'll get to that as we get to the evidence. Anything else on the opening statements?
Yes.
Okay, go for it.
All right. The fact that he admits the lies.
That was like the first thing out of his mouth to say
Right.
he lied to that was a horrible strategic decision, in my
Oh,
opinion.
I think
It's
so
one
too.
thing to admit your problems and to deal with the difficult facts. It's another thing to make them the highlight of your opening.
Yeah. And admit the searches. So he's admitting these things. So there is no credibility to his client after that. He hurt his client's credibility right from the start. And he's going to have a big hill to climb to get that jury back into thinking that his client tells the truth after he admitted his client's a constant liar all the time. Now, one thing he did say was really important. Right after he talked about the fact that there was this $400,000 in restitution that he had in the fraud case, right after that, he used the words, and I wrote it down, Brian Walshe will tell you. He said,
and that was going to be one of my follow-up questions is, after this opening, what do you think the chances Brian Walshe testifies are?
I think the chances are real good. I do.
I agree. A lot of people have disagreed with me, but I feel like there are lines, right? And I want to ask you about this because as a defense attorney, you can make these arguments and your client can end up not testifying, and it's not unethical because as a case develops, the client has a Fifth Amendment right, something can change, you cannot testify. He got about as close to the line as not arguing in good faith and being unethical if his client doesn't testify, in my opinion, because he did say Brian Walshe will testify. There's no way that he can argue that factual argument that this is a sudden unexplained death and he nudged her out of the bed if Brian Walshe doesn't testify. Like, those are all facts that are not coming into evidence in any other way unless Brian Walshe testifies. And correct me if I'm wrong, but he also talked about an expert that's going to explain how sudden unexplained deaths happen all the time. That expert can't testify unless there's a factual foundation that is even something that could have happened in this case. And how do we get there unless Brian Walshe testifies? I think Brian Walshe has to testify before that expert testifies.
Well, I don't know. This judge is allowing what's called reasonable inferences in a lot of cases.
Big time.
And so she could think there's a reasonable inference, since there's no other theory, that this was a sudden death. So, she's pretty broad in how she's doing that. She may let that happen. She may let that happen on the word of the defense lawyer that Brian Walshe is going to testify. She may let that happen so that Brian Walsh can be the last witness, which would be the normal case in most cases, trials of this kind. Another thing that was interesting, again, about Brian Walsh testified, but the fact that he is not a jealous guy. The fact that his wife comes home all the time and tells him about how she has crushes on guys, and she's upset because he is not more jealous. I mean, those kinds of things are going to add to his testimony when he testifies, and that's why I think he is going to have to testify. Again,
if he doesn't testify, would you take issue with that opening statement?
Yes, absolutely take issue with it. Because I really believe there is so much in that. If I was the prosecutor, there is so much in that opening statement that is based on him testifying so many facts that you might be able to get some kind of a jury instruction.
Yeah, to strike it.
To strike it, or tell the jury, ignore all of the allegations that Mr. So-and-so said because the defendant chose to exercise his Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, that you probably can't get that instruction. And that's the problem. That's what I was thinking too, is it's like, you can probably get some kind of instruction, maybe just to strike the opening statement or something like that, or strike the unexplained, unintended death comments because no facts came out about that. But you have to be very careful not to comment on the defendant exercising his Fifth Amendment right, because we all know what a big deal that is.
I think he's going to testify. I think that
me too.
Before we get to that problem, it may not be, maybe creating a problem where there isn't one.
It's just interesting conversation.
That happens all the time. So,
yeah.
It does.
Okay. Anything else with openings?
Let's see. I think that pretty much covers the contrast between the two openings, two types of openings that we saw.
Yeah. One a little bit more bland, but better facts. One a little bit more engaging, but worse facts. Yeah. So it's like you see kind of the differences.
And I think we see as the case, again, we'll go through it, but the way the prosecutor is asking his questions and going through his witnesses is boring. And it's just consistent with his opening statement. So he's just kind of plodding through this to present all this evidence to the jury without a lot of excitement.
Yeah. I don't think he's doing a bad job, though, honestly.
No.
He's definitely called some witnesses I wouldn't have called. I think it's unnecessary, but it's not unusual for a prosecutor to overtry a case and just put every single witness that could possibly testify to anything on the stand just to kind of quote unquote make sure. But and I actually took some issue with some things that happened Friday with the cross-examination that maybe the prosecutor went a little too far, but we'll get there. So let's get to the lead investigator, first witness. What did you think about him? What stuck out?
What's that? I think he did a pretty good job. Actually, I've got to tell you, one of the things overall, this is totally different than the Karen Reed case. Mm-hmm. Overall, these officers are far more competent. They are testifying much better. They don't use paper cups to pour put blood samples in. They haven't been doing that kind of screwy stuff that they did in the Reed case. So this is a much better case, much better presented. Now, another reason it might be much better presented generally is because there's not a lot of cross on a lot of this stuff because they're admitting the lies.
Exactly.
And they're admitting the searches. So you don't see a lot of crosses on those things. And they're admitting, they're admitting the chopping up of the body. So you don't hear a lot of cross-examination on the hatchets or things like that because of that, which makes this look like a smoother investigation.
We are in the thick of the holiday season, and so time is of the essence, and you cannot let your nutrition, your health, your food fall by the wayside. So today's sponsor, Green Chef, takes care of so many of those issues for you so you and your family can have amazing tasting meals that are just so much easier to prepare. It takes all the guesswork out of it. It takes all the shopping and the time that it takes to think about and prepare what do you need for a meal. Instead, you can pick your orders on Green Chef and they show up right to your door. So you can have Green Chef's real, clean ingredients that help you build lasting, healthy habits without the hassle. You can enjoy salads ready in 5 minutes, protein-filled breakfast, or nutrient-rich smoothies to fuel your day. Green Chef is ready to nurture your nutritional needs. And you and your family will never get bored because the recipes change every week. And with week-to-week flexibility, you can adjust your plan to match your mood and your schedule. So make this fall your healthiest yet with Green Chef. Head to greenchef.com/50LYK and use code 50LYK to get 50% off your first month, then 20% off for 2 months with free shipping. That's code 50LYK at greenchef.com/50LYK. Yeah, it's like they tied their own hands more than they tied the prosecutor's hands with those pleas. And another reason that they're not nitpicking and fighting about every little thing, which makes it seem better and is a lot easier for prosecutors and for law enforcement. But another very important reason why this is all seemingly a lot better than Karen Reed, it's Mr. Proctor, former Trooper Michael Proctor, who was actually very, very involved in this case. I think somebody said he was either initially or at one point a lead investigator on this case, but they're completely cutting him out, not talking about him. And the defense is not bringing him up at all.
Well,
not making him an issue in this case, not making him a part of this case at all.
He has been mentioned maybe
Yes.
twice. And I found out, other source, he is on the defense witness list.
They should call him.
So
they got nothing else. They might as well call him and be like, you were on this case, right? You're a liar. You got fired. You got fired.
Let me waive this Brady disclosure here. What do you think?
They don't have anything.
Yeah. So they might, but he's on the defense witness list.
Well, the prosecutors surely aren't going to call him, and they're doing a pretty good job without him, frankly, like insulating themselves from him.
Right. Oh, yeah. They did, I think the defense, well, let's start with what was good. In that first witness, the cut on the thumb, I liked that. I thought that was an interesting point about having his thumb cut, and they had a picture of it, and they showed that to the jury. So I thought that was good. And this particular officer was the one that went to apparently we talked about the dumpsters and found the COVID-19 card. I think they showed a picture of that COVID-19 card during this officer's testimony. Very significant. I mean, the jury has to be like this when they started hearing that kind of stuff. They started seeing that there's no mistake about whose body was in that dumpster, even though they're not denying it. The prosecutor has to do a job of showing the jury, when you go back in the jury room, you can't nitpick on these things because I've shown them all to you. Don't say to yourself, oh, why didn't the prosecutor show us this? Or why didn't the prosecutor, this is missing from the prosecutor's case, which is, by the way, a reasonable doubt instruction is, the fact that there isn't enough evidence. So the prosecutor, that cut on the thumb, finding the COVID-19 card, all really good.
And at the same time, well, before we get done with direct,
go ahead.
Like at the same time, he's giving these interviews, so clearly lying to police, and they're finding parts of her body all over the place. I mean, highlighting his lies, listening to him lie so calmly and easily, like in the days that he's dismembering her and moving her all around, like that's pretty cold to listen to.
Well, and again, timelines, I think, and maybe again in his closing, the prosecutor's going to do it. But in this case, the timeline.
Yeah.
How many days was he panicked? I panicked. All right. Well, you panicked, and you panicked that day. You panicked that night. He panicked for days, apparently, because
he's calling all these people asking where Anna Walshe is. When he knows exactly where. I mean, that stuff is great. It's not a great defense. It's not a logical defense at all, in my opinion.
And so on cross, he talked about he didn't withdraw any money. So, so trying to get away with the money, away from a money motive for why he did this. And he also talked about that there is no evidence that he saw or had access to the messages. Again, that is a real key throughout the cross-examinations, because we talked about this before. In his opening, he talked about this sudden death. However, what he really is when he's cross-examining, what you're really seeing is getting away from premeditation. That is where he's focusing his cross-examination on, is that this was not premeditated. And so therefore it is not a first-degree M. So again, he started that with this cross, we started talking about access to the messages, so he wouldn't be able to see any messages between about the affair. and he's starting that here.
And while motive doesn't have to be proven, and I assume that's why you're bringing it up now,
Right.
motive helps a lot when it comes to premeditation and getting an actual first degree intentional homicide. So let's talk about the two main motives. There's also the federal case, not wanting to take the kids. That's kind of a motive. But the two main motives that the prosecutor's kind of sprinkling out there, which are the two most stereotypical, most normal motives to kill somebody that jurors probably lock into and lock onto, but the defense has really tried to be picking those apart and poking holes in those motives. And so I want to ask you kind of what you think. The first one being the financial motive. They've put off the fact that, she had life insurance policies and she made all the money and he had to pay this money in restitution and he didn't have any money. And, he was worried about that. How do you think the defense has done? Well, both sides. How do you think the prosecutors have done in focusing on that financial motive? How do you think the defense has done in picking it apart?
I think the prosecutor has done, it's easy. She had $1,250,000, I think it was in life insurance. I think $1 million was term and 250 was whole life. But $1,250,000 in life insurance. He had this apparently money saved up. However, one question that I thought was key, and you never know what a jury is going to think, is when they found out the reason that she had life insurance was the life insurance agent was trying to sell it to him, and he could not get life insurance because of the federal case. And it was the life insurance salesman, surprise, surprise, who suggested that maybe your wife needs some life insurance. You can't get any. And I thought that was a big point. I thought that was important.
Not just that, but his mommy paid for their house. His mommy gives him money for this. His mommy gives him money for that. His mommy's name's on the lead. Like, it seemed to me that his mom would have given him whatever money he needed. And we think there's probably more coming about his mom paying for things in the future. So like the financial motive to me personally is really weak sauce. Because I agree with you. I picked out the same thing. That was a really important factor to me, that it's not like Brian Walsh was like, okay, I got to get life insurance on Anna Walsh right now. I got to put it on her right now. Like, it just wasn't like that, which has been a very clear motive in some other cases. That was not the case here, in my opinion. But I do think a lot of jurors are going to hear, $1 million, that's a lot of money. People would kill for less. So that's going to be a motive that I think some jurors are going to buy.
Right.
Okay, then what do you think about the affair motive? Jealousy. She found out she was cheating, freaked out, lost it. Because the defense, like you said, has focused a lot on, did he even know that? He didn't say anything to anybody. They tried to hide it. How would he have ever known about it?
Absolutely important. I think that's a real key. That one is the most important. And the judge is going to, it sounds like, I don't think she's actually said it yet, but I think she's going to read that instruction.
Consciousness of guilt. Yeah.
Right. To the jury.
That's not. No, the consciousness of guilt is with the dismembering. And
well, I think she was talking about reasonable inference. Was that about a reasonable inference? Because they were arguing about
that was the reason why she allowed, or was going to allow, the William Fasto, the guy she cheated with. She was going to allow those text messages in for state of mind, because the jury can make a reasonable inference based on some of the comments Brian Walsh made, that he saw some messages on his computer that were supposed to go to Anna Walsh. I don't think that's an instruction she's reading to the jury. She was just reading out her order to the lawyers as to why she made that decision.
All right. I guess I heard her read it, and I thought it might have been instruction, but I could have misinterpreted, like you said. I know she talked about the reasonable inference that could be drawn. And she said that there were and the prosecutor brought up some other things around that could show it's a reasonable inference, like what a coincidence that he made certain phone calls at certain times, or did certain things at certain times. So I think she's going to let the prosecution argue that there was an affair. So far, evidence-wise, I think it's pretty weak with this evidence. It's got to be there somewhere, but it looks pretty weak right now with regards to evidence of the fact that he knew that there was an affair.
I completely agree. I think it was a bit of a stretch for the judge to let that in. I understand the reasonable inference, and he did say maybe he saw some messages, but never did he say, I saw a message about them having an affair that I remember. But he did say something like, she sent a picture to William Fasto on New Year's Eve. How would he know she sent a picture to William Fasto unless he saw her phone? Well, she could have just told him, or he could have seen her with her phone sending him a pic. Like, there's a million different ways. So to let all that evidence in, to me, is, I would not have let it in if I was a judge, honestly. Right now, with what I know, more could be coming. And the fact that he called William Fasto on December 25th, Googled William Fasto's name, and the prosecution was putting that forward as just some very damning evidence. I thought the defense knocked it out of the park with the cross-examination where they said, well, let's take a look. On December 25th, what happened? Anna Walsh didn't make her flight. That's why he was Googling plane crash. That's why he was Googling, did Anna Walsh die in a plane crash? That's why he's Googling William Fasto's name, because he called William Fasto to figure out if he knew where Anna Walsh was on December 25th. So it seemed really nefarious the way the prosecutor presented it. But after the defense gave the timeline, I was like, man, to let in the fact that Brian Walsh knew about this affair, I think is a stretch. And you don't need it, in my opinion, if you're the prosecutor to win this case.
No. And he also called him after January 1st
to
as
see if
well,
he knew where she was.
to see if he knew where she was. And again, the argument is, how did he know his number? How did he know that he would know where she was?
Well, he had her number, but
why would he think that they were together? Yes, but I'm talking about the prosecution inferences that they can make from the fact that that was the person that he allegedly called to say, my wife is missing. Do you know where she is?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's a purely discretion, and the judge used her discretion. It's not going to be an appellate issue that they overturn this case with. It's within her discretion. I understand how she got there.
Right.
And that's the definition of reasonable inference, right? It's like, what's reasonable? Well, the different people, they're going to think different things are reasonable. The judge thinks that's a reasonable inference, and I understand it. And it's not something I'll vehemently disagree with her on. I think it's a bit of a stretch, but maybe there's more coming.
Right. Okay, we got a rabbit trail there. We're saying.
Yeah, but those are the questions everybody's been asking me all week, so I want to make sure to get your take on them. Anything else from the lead investigator?
No.
All right, next is Guarino. All of the internet searches.
All right, and there's tons of them. I mean, tons of bad ones. Of course, cross-examination pointed something else out, but you talk about a divorce, you talk about your wife missing, you talk about cleaning blood, you talk about M, you talk about saws. There's just, I don't know how much more gruesome and depressing and psychotic you can be to have these kinds of searches. Who makes these kinds of searches unless they plan on doing something really bad? Maybe
not plan on doing something bad, but cover up something they did. So what do you feel about the people that ask, okay, so he admits to dismembering the body, and that's what all those searches are, but how does that prove that he did it, number one? And number two, how does that prove premeditation? Because all of this stuff happened after, and he didn't Google, like, how do you end somebody's life? And he seems like somebody who Googles everything before he commits a crime. What do you think about those questions?
Well, some of the searches, like for instance, where they talked about, was it Peter Kearney? I think it's Peter. I think I got that right.
Yeah, the garbage bag killer or something like that.
Killed 28 people.
Yeah.
And
that was a tough one. That was a tough one for Brian Walsh.
This is the kind of guy you look up to. He killed 28 people, and you're learning from him.
Look up to him. He just Googled him, okay?
But you're learning from him.
It. Yeah.
Come on. The freeway killer, the trash bag killer, apparently had two names, and he dismembered them and put them in trash bags. Come on. Who does that? I know. But the other thing that they talked about, there were some searches before January 1st. One was cheating wives. That was December 27th.
Well, yeah.
I realized it was a kind of
an adult search.
Right. It was an adult search, but still, you know what I mean? That's the topic. And so,
that's a reasonable inference. Yeah, I get it. That's true. Yeah. That adds to the reasonable inference.
Sure, it does. There are things that happened before January 1st. And so, like I said, yes, you may have inferences, but the things he was looking up and the type of people he was looking up, those are all reasonable inferences. This guy is not just trying to cover up an M, but this guy is planning an M and trying to take care of it.
Well, I disagree with that. I don't think there's a single Google search that says he was planning it. Not a single Google search that said he planned it. No way. I'm not saying he didn't plan it. Maybe they are going to end up deciding that, but none of these searches that were made before December 31st are like, I'm planning to do this. No,
Oh, no,
not at
no,
all.
none of
Not
the
at all.
searches before December 31st. But
Right.
starting on January 1st, he does searches about people who emmed people,
Sure.
not just
Okay. Fine.
not just people who
I agree.
hid bodies, but it was people who emmed people and
Right.
hid bodies,
I
both.
agree. I agree. No, I agree. Afterward, and that's what I don't think people really understand how strong the evidence of consciousness of guilt is. Because while it doesn't wholeheartedly prove the crime, you think, and again, you make the reasonable inference, why would Brian Walshe lie to police and dismember her and throw her in dumpsters all over the place? Like, why would he do that? And you can answer that question as a juror because he ended her life. Now,
Mm-hmm.
did he do it intentionally premeditated? Sure, that's still something that the state has to prove. But I think that really goes a long way in proving that he did it if you believe this evidence, of course, and the jury takes it that way. I think that's a reasonable inference based on the evidence. If you're still looking for a Christmas gift for somebody, today's sponsor, Aura Frames, has just what you're looking for, and it works for almost anybody. This digital picture frame will let you upload unlimited photos and videos. You just download the Aura app and connect it to Wi-Fi. You can personalize it by adding a message before the gift arrives, and every frame comes packaged in a premium gift box with no price tag on it. It's so easy to set up and so easy to use. You can share photos and videos effortlessly from your phone all year long. We have multiple Aura frames in my house right now, and every single person in my family can add pictures to it whenever they want, and it's hilarious and fun. To every time you walk by the frame, you never know what exactly you're going to see. So for a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named number one by Wirecutter, by using promo code LYK at checkout. That's AURAFrames.com, promo code LYK. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply.
All right. And then, moving briefly to the cross, the cross, and it's going to be consistent through his other crosses as well. But basically what his cross is.
Well, this is the female lawyer cross, Tim, I think.
Right. But defense cross, let me call it defense cross. Consistently what it is context. They're crossing him and he goes, do you really know the context of these? You got to put it within, the time frames. Were the time frames too limited that you really searched? And that happens over and over again when they're doing their crosses, saying, well, you don't know what he was talking about before. You don't know what he was talking about after. You don't know how many actresses,
Yeah.
well,
like to me,
searched, and, those kind of things.
So you don't buy any of that? You didn't think any of that was good cross?
No.
Because I thought pre-January 1st, I thought their context questions on the searches actually made sense. I thought they did poke some holes in almost every single cross. It's like, he's Googling a movie, he's Googling a song, he's Googling things that make sense, right? Like that, because he was wondering if that plane crashed. I thought they added a lot of context to the pre-January 1st searches. Post-January 1st search, you're screwed. It's over. He clicked like 11 pages deep and had to, clean blood off the floor or whatever. Like they're screwed in those searches. But I think the pre-January 1st searches, they did a pretty good job, about as good of a job as you can, trying to pacify those.
Well, let's talk about this sudden death thing. I don't know what's going to happen with the experts, and I'm looking forward to hearing the experts on that. But blood, all right, where did the blood come from on a sudden
when
death?
He dismembered her.
Right.
That's post-dismemberment.
And where did he dismember her? Right there in the carpet in the living room? I mean, the bedroom?
Yes.
Is that where he cut her up? I mean,
or down in the basement or something. I don't know.
Well, then he has to. He's going to have to testify, I guess, and talk about the fact that he cut her up right there at the carpet.
Yeah. I mean, it's what happened to Anna Walsh is not laughable at all.
No.
His defense and what he's going to try to tell this jury, I do think, is laughable to a sense that they're going to be a little bit, they're going to feel insulted. Like, you seriously think we're going to believe you this lie, you fraudster who lied about the value of art and lied to the cops? You're sitting here and you're lying to us today. Like, to me, that's the most reasonable thought from the jury. But I do think that Brian Walshe overall, the story he's trying to tell is so bad that it could just make them hate him so much. And I think these searches add to that. What did you think about? Because Guarino, I thought, was not a very good witness, the guy that testified to all the searches. And basically, all he did was read searches, read titles, basically. He didn't know any questions about any context, any more depth, any explanations. This was years ago. There was nothing deeper than just the titles. Do you think that will matter? Or are those search titles and search terms bad enough on their own that it doesn't matter that he couldn't explain any context?
Well, they're bad enough on their own because if the prosecution does what they should do and establish the timeline of the searches, because if the searches, the first search I believe was at 4:52 a.m. I think that was the first search, and then you see here's a guy in a panic. Again, you got to take into account he's saying he was in this panic. Here's a guy in a panic who's got the presence of mind to make 5, 6 searches at 4 o'clock in the morning. Well, there were 2 at 4 and then at 1:45 p.m. And so basically he's thinking all day how to cover this up in a panic. I mean, his mind is lucid enough to think that. And he does it on January 2nd. He does how to saw a body and about broken teeth. On January 3rd, it's decomposition in a plastic bag. And can the police search your history on a computer? That's days and days and hours of panic. That's hard to sell, I think, that you're in a panic for that long. And you were
and
that
maybe the number one most illogical thing, he never once searched what could cause your wife to die unexpected in the middle of the night.
Or CPR.
39-year-old. Yeah.
Or CPR.
Or what's the number to 911? I could see him Googling that.
Right. So again, this timeline, although the witness wasn't, again, he was again bland and he did put in all these numbers and times. And if the prosecutor does it right, he will put all this up on a board when he does closing argument so that they can see what this man was doing after he cut up his wife.
Yeah.
Oh. So let's see on him. He did talk about buying diamonds versus divorce.
How about that? So that theory just kind of as a whole to encompass it and encapsulate it, that Brian Walshe really loved his wife, and everybody basically has said that. And Anna Walsh really loved Brian Walshe and spoke highly of him, even to her lover, and how she wanted the world to see Brian Walshe as she saw him. How do you think that goes into lack of motive and lack of premeditation and lack of intentional homicide here?
Well, I'd have to say it goes for the defense.
Right.
It does benefit the defense if there wasn't so much other garbage. But yes, those are positives for the defense. Those are something you're going to hear over and over again, I think, as a theme throughout this, is that they really did love each other and they really didn't want to separate. She was just having these flings because she told her husband she had these crushes, and her husband would just say fine and wasn't jealous about it. So, maybe she was a bit loose, but he loved her and apparently she loved him. That's the argument.
All right. Anything else with Guarino?
No.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Did you hear the argument about sentencing the beginning of the next day?
I did hear the argument about sentencing, yes.
So what did you think about the judge saying she's not sure she can go up to that 20-year maximum because he didn't lie about an investigation involving a life felony? She wouldn't know that unless he's convicted of a life felony.
Here's what I heard. And this is not maybe what she said, but here's what I heard. What I heard was, I don't want to have to make this call. If the jury comes back guilty, then it's an easy call. I don't have to worry about it. If the jury does not come back guilty, then it's in my court, and then I'm going to have to make a decision. But right now, I don't have to make that call, and I'm not going to make that call. And I'm going to wait and see if it's easy, if the jury makes it easy for me. That's what I heard.
Fine. I get that. Obviously, that's what she's kicking the can. But I'm saying to lie about an investigation involving a life felony would you agree or disagree that you don't have to be convicted, or somebody doesn't have to be convicted of a life felony in order for you to lie about something involving a life felony?
I agree with you. I mean, I
Because it's
think
not
that
always the same person. Like
I do.
you
I
could
agree
commit
with
a
you. I do.
you could commit a life felony and I could lie about it and I could get convicted whether or not you get convicted of that life felony.
Right.
So
No,
that it
I
just
agree
didn't
with you.
make
I think
any.
I heard her read the law, and that's the way I understood it too.
Okay.
But I would have done what she did. If I was the judge, that's what I would have done.
Most judges do things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we're still in Guarino. Okay, then we get to a couple like quick witnesses. The U.S. Customs and Border Protection person. Which one of those small witnesses do you want to hit, if any of them? We got the K9 officer. We got the JetBlue guy. We got the officer who showed up at the house with no body cam. We got the Lyft subpoena person. We got the Uber person.
I found them all equally important, which means I would have put them on. I think the prosecutor did the right thing by putting them on, so to foreclose any jury discussion about something not being put on. That they showed that there was an investigation, that they actually did do a missing persons thing, that they actually did do the K9. I mean, they went so far as to check travel records, JetBlue. You and I both know that Uber and Lyft, getting them to cooperate in an investigation isn't always easy, but they did. They came in and they found no records of this. They were minor witnesses, all I think of equal importance, but I would have put them all on to establish all of those facts. They were quick. They weren't, any real problem for either side. So I have no problem with those being put on, and I think they all added something, maybe little, but they added something to the trial.
So that's something where we disagree. They definitely did not need to call the K9 person. They called like 3 other people that said we did a K9 search and didn't find anything. I don't think that was that helpful. They also definitely didn't need to call the guy that showed up to the house with no body cam, because I think all that could have done.
The well check?
Yeah.
The well check guy?
Yeah. I didn't think they needed to do that, because I mean, all it did is maybe the jury's like, oh, why didn't you have body cam? It just opens up negative questions. I don't think they did anything positive, but that's semantics. And again, where I will give the prosecutor credit, it was so quick. They were up and down. They didn't waste any time with them, which was good.
Right.
Okay, let me see if there was anything else. What did you think about the owner of the used car dealership, who was also their landlord?
I thought that was also a good witness.
Yeah, I agree. I thought he was important.
Because of the camera, because the fact that Mr. Walshe asked about the cameras and asked about surveillance and asked about what they couldn't see from his car lot cameras. Why do you do that? I mean, a reasonable person really doesn't think about that. I think that was a good witness, and I think it showed that he was consciously covering things up.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. But I think Walshe would probably say, or his lawyers would say, well, he was just trying to find Anna Walshe, and he wanted to see if they picked her up on the cameras. That's probably would be their argument. But all right, then the life insurance salesman.
It's not going to be their argument, because they admit that he lied.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying, but he was making all these calls to try and cover up the fact that she was dead, not that he ended her life, but that he found her unexpectedly, and he was obviously trying to cover that up with the lies and dismemberment. And so he was calling everybody, ask if they saw her, and he was calling to see if there was a camera to make it look like he was looking for her. That's their argument, which again, it's very illogical and it's probably not going to work, but I think that would be their argument. All right, next was the life insurance salesman.
Again, we kind of already talked about that as the financial motivation. And, we've gotten into the fact that, he said, well, if you can't have insurance, let me sell some to your wife. So we got
nothing else there.
Yeah.
The next one that I have is and you can feel free to jump in if I'm skipping any that you thought were important. The Massachusetts Crime Lab, where we saw the pictures of the hacksaw, the hatchet, all the just horrifying things.
Wonderful evidence. I mean, absolutely makes you cringe. Looking at that, I guarantee you there are people on that jury that got goosebumps when they looked at it, or their stomach got upset. But that was great. And I like the way they displayed them when they laid them out. I don't know if it was a sheet or whatever it is that they laid them out on, but I like the way they displayed them all at once. I thought that was, but great. But the cross-examination was really weak on that.
Well, I mean, it's It's pretty tough to cross that guy.
Well, I mean,
Um,
cross contamination
I mean,
for
what else you got?
the
What else?
blood.
What's he gonna say? What's he gonna say? Well, couldn't he have been chopping down a tree with that? It's like,
But wait a minute. If they're admitting that he chopped up the body, why cross-examine at all?
I don't know.
Why? There was no
It was
reason to
pretty
cross.
quick. It
Yeah.
was pretty quick. Okay, then we get to one of the star witnesses potentially. I think it was somebody the jury was really waiting to hear from. William Fasto, the lover of Anna Walsh. What did you think of him? It's the holiday season, so you can have some fun responsibly only with today's sponsor, DraftKings Casino. New players download the DraftKings app and use code LAWYER. Play $5 and get 50 spins a day for 10 days on cash eruption slots. That's code LAWYER, LAWYER, and enjoy holidays on the house. My gift to you this holiday season with DraftKings Casino. In partnership with DraftKings Casino, the crown is yours. Gambling problem? Please call 1-800-GAMBLER, GAMBLER. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. You must be 21 plus and physically present in just these states: Connecticut, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia only. It's void in Ontario and eligibility restrictions apply. Non-withdrawable casino spins issued as 50 spins per day for 10 days. Valid for featured games only and expire each day after 24 hours. See terms at casino.draftkings.com/promos. Ends January 25th, 2026 at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time. So please enjoy it if you can responsibly in those states and with the eligibility requirements only.
Well, I thought Mr. Fasto, I liked him. I mean, I didn't like him as a person, but I liked him as a witness. I think that he came across, I hate to use this word, but professional. He answered the questions. He didn't elaborate. He wasn't cute. He didn't give snippy answers. I think he came across as, if a juror, there are jurors who are going to look at him, and because he was having an affair, aren't going to believe anything he says, only because they consider his moral value to be so low. But as far as giving answers, I think he answered those questions honestly. He came across as telling the truth. That's the way I viewed him.
Yeah, I think that was fine. I don't think he was as much of a home run as I was expecting, especially when it came to the cross. And he basically admitted that, he doesn't know if Brian Walsh knew. He doesn't have any evidence Brian Walsh knew. Anna Walsh spoke really highly of Brian Walsh. So, I mean, I think the defense did score some points on cross. What did you think?
I think so. And then, of course, we have the phone call to him.
Yeah.
Hey, have you seen her? No, I haven't seen her. Here's the code or the key or whatever, I forget it was, but in order for you to go in and check the place and see if she's there. And the fact that he had a January 4th meeting with her scheduled that she never showed up for, obviously. I think that those
that was good.
Yeah, I think those were good. I think those were good. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Next up, the guy from the painting company and the two bar studio instructors.
I have to ask you this question because I cannot figure this out, and maybe and maybe we're jumping ahead and we shouldn't. What is the ceiling?
I don't know. No, this case is not one that I've been following for 5 years. I basically just knew about the Google searches and the dismemberment. That's really all I knew about this case prior to it really coming up on the radar and us watching the trial. I don't know either. It's a big focus for everybody so far is the hole in the ceiling. I don't know.
I mean, the only thing I can think of, I mean, this would be strange, is if they fought and that hole in the ceiling was from the fight or from, a hatchet or something or they found some ceiling plaster on the hatchet or the hacksaw or something. But again, so far it hasn't been explained. It certainly wasn't explained in opening. So
yeah, I don't know either.
Yeah. Okay. And then, of course, after the hole in the ceiling, then we have a bunch of health people.
Yeah, the bar instructors to talk about how healthy she was, what a great job she did. The cross where it's like, you're not a doctor.
Right.
I mean, I think that had to be the cross. It may have come off as a little condescending, but those are the questions you have to ask.
Right. Yeah, you do. And, but obviously, again, the prosecution painting the picture of her being a healthy, She exercises. She does all this stuff. How key that was, and then we have the daycare person. Basically, and it's one of the things they really haven't done a good job of yet. Maybe they will. Is they haven't done a good job of painting the victim in this case yet, and maybe they're going to do that as to what kind of a person she was. And I don't think they've done much with that other than saying that she had an affair and she commuted from Washington, D.C.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, maybe are they going to call a family member of hers or something? I assume.
Yeah.
All right.
Dumpster.
Yeah, the Claremont apartment lady with the video of him going to the dumpster with the big bag. I mean, that was also like straight out of a serial killer movie.
It was absolutely. And again, I do. You're right. You have to feel sorry for the defense lawyers sometimes. How do you cross-examine? His cross-examine was there was no sign on the dumpster about when they picked the garbage up. Great question.
I mean, I know that was
question.
brutal. That was brutal.
When
it's like, brother,
pick up the dumpster?
It's like, well, he didn't know. Like, there's no signage up. It's like, man,
great question.
I'm surprised he didn't Google that. All right, then we get to Connor Keefe, who was the officer dealing with the digital forensics evidence with, more Google searches or Safari searches, text messages, phone calls, things like that.
Right. And again, he's another remnant from the Reed trial. And but I thought he did a better job this time.
He didn't do, I don't think he testified in the second Reed trial. I thought he was fine in this trial. Yeah, I thought he was fine. I thought he was like a little bit nervous. He didn't want to do too much, which I think is fine for him. But yeah, I thought he was fine this trial.
Yeah. And I think they tried to get him, and that was more than once on cross. The defense has asked witnesses questions that are obviously beyond their either expertise or their assignment. They say, well, you didn't do this and you didn't do that. Well, that's not what I was there for. That's not my assignment. And I think they tried to do that with him as well.
Yeah.
Go beyond what it is he was designed to do. But, he did a good job because he was able to show some travel, movement that I thought was pretty, it was going to be pretty key. We're going to hear a lot of later. But I thought that he did a decent job.
And then what'd you think about the cross?
I think the cross was, again, I think the cross was pretty weak on him too. I've got to say, and again, I don't.
I like some of the cross on him. I thought, again, this is where it came out. This is where it came out. Why did he Google Christmas plane crash? Why did he Google Fasto's, name? Why did he Google did Anna Walshe die? Because those seemed very weird in the past when they came out from under the prosecution. And I thought adding that context was important. Is it a home run? Is he going to win because of it? No way. That's not what I'm saying. But I did think that was about as good of a cross as you could have done. And we heard Michael Proctor's name, which is,
right.
Maybe some good foreshadowing.
Well, like I said, they're consistently going through context. The context of this message or the context of that travel or the context of that search. That's what they're going through, trying to create reasonable doubt, even though I don't believe they're going to present the context. So, but they just do that for cross-examination.
Well, they definitely presented some with, the movie and the song and some of that stuff. They are presenting it. I do think, to me, and maybe I'm trying to look at this with a really skeptical eye because I know how bad it is for Brian Walshe and his team. So I'm trying to give him every benefit of the doubt I can. But I do think that they have had me thinking at sometimes like, just stating the title or the Google search words is lazy by the prosecution, and they're just trying to inflame the jury as opposed to give them the true context of what something means. Will a juror think that's misrepresenting, or the prosecution's trying to mislead them and make them think worse, or something that's not actually what it seems to be based on the title?
I noticed when they were testifying that they looked in binders. Do we know by chance if maybe those binders had material in them from those websites?
I don't think for all of them. I think for some of them, but not all of them. I think it's just Google searches with times and days.
Some of them, it looked like they were looking, they would ask a question, say page from page so-and-so to page so-and-so. and I'm wondering if there's going to be some context in there about what those searches actually contained, or what the material data was in that search. That, again, I'd be curious, because we didn't actually see the whole book, but I noticed
Yeah,
that
I'm
the
not sure.
pages up there. Yeah.
Anybody who starts or runs a small business knows that there's so much focus that you need to have on the business just to make it successful, whether it's growth, whether it's sales, whether it's the product itself or the service itself that you have to focus on. Nobody wants to deal with the boring things like HR and payroll, and it can be so expensive and difficult to get that all set up and running smoothly. Well, today's sponsor, Gusto, takes care of all of that for you. Gusto is an online payroll and benefits software built for small businesses. It's all in one, remote friendly, and incredibly easy to use. So you can pay, hire, onboard, and support your team from anywhere. And as you know, most of those things are the most laborious things that take your time away from focusing on the business, which is really what you need to do if you're the person that starts or runs the small business. You can save so much time with their automated tools built right in, like offer letters, onboarding materials, direct deposit, and more. Try Gusto today at gusto.com/LYK and get 3 months free when you run your first payroll. That's 3 months of free payroll at gusto.com/LYK. So one more time, don't forget it. It's gusto.com/LYK.
Okay.
Then we had another trooper to talk about, the contents of the dumpster. Anything about that?
Wait a minute.
It's kind of
too,
repetitive.
on O'Keefe, there was a December 25th search. Anna Walshe found dead. You remember that?
Yeah.
That was December 25th.
But see, that's what I'm saying. You're misunderstanding that, because the Commonwealth presented that as a nefarious Google search, and it's not. That is the time she missed her flight, or it got canceled and she had to drive home, and Brian Walsh was trying to figure out where she was. I don't think that's a nefarious.
Dead?
Yes. Why is that a weird thing? He's trying to figure out if she's dead or alive because she's not answering him and her flight got canceled. He was trying to figure out if there was a plane crash. Am I crazy?
That's not the way. If my wife was driving home, snowstorm,
he didn't know she was driving. He didn't know
whatever,
she was driving.
Whatever she was, I wouldn't put in my search would not be my wife's name and found dead, and that would not be my search.
So what do you think? He was trying to take her life that night? That was his plan?
Or he was hoping. But that would not be my search.
I haven't done my video on that yet. I'm going to do it tomorrow morning. I'm going to ask the chat and see what they think. I'm sure they're all going to agree with you because everybody hates Brian Walsh at this point. But I thought the defense lawyers did a pretty good job of being like, yeah, that's not as bad as it sounded. Because when the Commonwealth first put it out, I was like, why is he searching? That's crazy. Like, I thought it was so bad for him. But after the context was laid, we'll see what the chat ends up thinking. And I'm sure they'll let me know in the chat on this video too.
Now, another
Anything
thing
else?
Yes, this was good for the defense. He had New Year's Day dinner reservations. That also came out. So yeah. I think that was, I think, important. He did searches for a Porsche, and he also the building searches. I think was it during opening? At some point, they tried to make those nefarious, and apparently there were health outbreaks in those buildings, and he did a building search for health outbreaks.
And he searched it way before. Before they said he did. Yeah. Again, I thought the defense did about as good as you can.
Yeah. Those I think were, I thought that dinner, that New Year's Day reservation, I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was a good point that the defense.
A noodles place or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else from him?
No.
All right. Anything about the next cop that I thought was repetitive, talking about the hacksaw and all that stuff? I guess she was saying, we give it to the ME's office to kind of set up that the ME was the next witness, but anything important about her?
No.
Okay. And then the medical examiner was the last witness, but it's kind of right in the middle. So he just kind of started.
Yeah, but he's going to be, what he gave us, obviously was a hint of what's coming, in that he is a medical examiner. He examines cadavers, but he didn't examine a cadaver in this case. He made sure he noted that this was an unusual situation where he was asked to examine items for human tissue. Now, we don't know his conclusions.
I assume what his results are going to be, but we'll see.
Right. And it's going to be, it's going to be interesting what he's going to draw. And it's also going to be interesting because I think that they legitimately can start their cross-examination about their defense with regard to this sudden death. I think they can do this with this guy. He's a medical examiner. If they've qualified him as a medical examiner, she may let them ask him questions about that.
Maybe. I mean, again, it's all got to be done in good faith, and they
Right.
have their own experts. So I don't know if I'd want to test it with this guy who's not a friendly witness to me, but maybe they
No, he's
will.
not. He's not friendly, and frankly, he seems pretty sharp.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I probably would not broach that
right,
subject with him. But
right, right.
okay. So also something that was interesting is I do feel like the prosecution's moving pretty quickly through the case. We found out that they planned on the case being 3.5 to 4.5 weeks. And now, because we're ahead of schedule, they don't plan it to take any longer than 3 weeks for the evidence. So, a week or a week and a half early. And usually defense attorneys in cases like this make it seem like their case is longer than it actually is. So somehow that usually tightens up at the end as well. What do you think about the fact that this case, is going much quicker than expected?
Well, frankly, I don't know what they have another 2 weeks of. And I'm trying to think that
Well,
really. I mean,
well,
are they going to?
there's
Are they going to go ahead? I mean, I got theories, but
well, we know that they're still going to go with the medical examiner. They're still going to have to prove that it was her tissue and things like that. I think they're going to have a family member of Anna Walsh testify at some point. I think they're going to try to get into the fact that the mom of Brian Walsh hired a private investigator, which if she did to look into Anna Walsh, that's going to give us some motive and affair and anticipation, or at least some suspect. He suspected it. So I do think there's at least some stuff like that. Again, we don't know all the evidence in this case. So I think if they think it's going to take 3 weeks, there's another week of the prosecution. And then I think the defense probably said they have a week of testimony. That'd be my guess.
did it surprise you when the boyfriend or the guy she was having the affair with, when he testified that they didn't introduce any text messages? They talked about them, they said them, and they said, "Did you say this?" And they talked, they quoted them, but the messages themselves did not get introduced.
I thought they did introduce them. So I don't know.
Think
I thought they did introduce them, and then I thought they just didn't read them. They definitely didn't read any and put them up on the screen like they've done for the other ones. But that was the big fight trying to get those in. I thought they did enter them, but maybe they did just talk about them, and it was all about her state of mind.
Yeah, I think they just talked about them and quoted them.
I
But
don't
it
remember.
surprised me they didn't actually put them on the screen and do all the stuff that we would normally do.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know about that either. Any big surprises in week one for you? Anything stick out?
I do think the opening, the defense opening, the sudden death, that was not a surprise. It was an unknown.
Yeah.
It was an unknown, and they put a name to their defense. We didn't know what the defense was going to be. Now we know that it's the sudden death syndrome. So that's number one. Number two, him actually saying that Brian Walsh will tell you during that opening statement. I don't know if that was a slip of the tongue because he only said it once. I don't know if it's a slip of the tongue, but saying that, those two things in the opening, those are the things that I found very significant. Otherwise, no, I didn't find any real surprises.
I'm pretty sure Donna Adelson's lawyer's opening certainly made it sound like she was going to testify, and then she didn't. So, everything's up in the air still. One of the big unanswered questions for a lot of people in the chat, or the people that are hung up on something, has been premeditation. How do you think the state has done so far planning that this was an intentional premeditated homicide as opposed to a second degree or manslaughter or something like that?
And honestly, I look at it two ways. As a lawyer, I don't think they've done a really good job yet. It's an unfinished painting right now. They've got a lot of work to do. As a juror, the everyman sitting there, I don't know if they need to do a lot more than just show the hatchets and the hacksaws and that's the thing, is that this is so gruesome and so unbelievable to the average person. I mean, who in the world would think that even if my wife died of a sudden syndrome, that I would take a hacksaw and start cutting her up on the carpet and then put her in a trash bag and start throwing her in a dumpster? Who would do that? And those people on the jury are thinking to themselves, I couldn't do this to my spouse. I don't care what happened. And so that's the problem, is I think a juror is going to be so incensed by this that they could convict with the very weakest of evidence of premeditation.
Yeah, I think they're going to hate this guy. Like, I think it's going to be really hard for the jury to give him anything, any benefit of the doubt ever. But like you said, legally speaking, I think it's weak so far.
But
We'll
there's
see if that
enough to
changes.
get to the jury. I
Yeah,
think there's enough
exactly.
for the jury, there's enough for the judge to give it to the jury. Because a lot of times we know judges have the ability to take certain things away from a jury. If they don't think there's enough evidence of premeditation, they can take first degree M away and start them on second, so that they can't consider first. But in this
Yeah,
case, I think she's going to think there's enough reasonable inference
absolutely.
that it's going to go to the jury on premeditation.
Absolutely. Yeah, she's definitely giving it to the jury. Okay. Any other thoughts on week one? That we
No,
haven't
no,
hit?
and like I said, it was a much quicker week, a lot more witnesses and evidence than I expected.
Yeah, especially with the half day on Friday, which I think she said is going to be the norm for them as far as their schedule goes. So,
Right,
all
which is
right,
good for
that's it. Week one in the books. Yeah, it makes it easier to cover.
yeah.
Week one is in the books. That's your take. If you guys have questions for him, put them in the chat. We will ask them to him next week when we recap week two on the podcast. We will continue doing this. Dad, thanks for joining me as always. Until next time, we are out of here. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe. You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com. And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, the Lawyer You Know.